Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Entre Gigantes. I'm your co-host, José Aristimuño, and on the other side, we got Gunther Sanabria. And in the middle, we got a special guest with us today, Barrett Holmes Pitner. Barrett, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We are happy you're here. Barrett's a character. Barrett is, I think you got different hats, right? You're a journalist,
producer,
filmmaker, writer, yeah. An opinion columnist. I do a lot of stuff.
So, and this is no joke. I've seen Barrett on MSNBC. You write for some other publication, but I've seen you on MSNBC. I know it's for a fact.
Yeah, I was on MSNBC. I write for the Daily Beast, but I also write for the BBC and the Guardian, and written for other publications too. So
this is the man. This is the man. And you are, by the way, I think we have to say this. Barrett is our first guest, full English. This is.
Yep. Well, I wish my Spanish was better, but yeah.
Well, I wish my English was better.
you and I both.
We'll manage.
Look, I want to get right into it because there's so many things that I want our audience who are listening, who are watching us, who are reading us, to know about you, right? So you're working on a film, Altars, right?
Yeah.
Day of the Dead.
Altares,
El Día de los Muertos.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from the South. I didn't grow up around the Latino community, but when I moved to DC, I just got a bunch of Latino friends, just organically. Like, that's just the community I started hanging out with. In 1 year, my girlfriend invited me to a Day of the Dead ceremony, party at someone's house, and I had no clue what this was.
What was happening?
And I was just like, these are my friends. I'm showing up. I don't know what's going on.
Weird name and everything, right? Day of the Dead.
Yeah, right.
Everyone has like face paint on, and I'm not like a big face painter myself. And I was like, this is bizarre. But then the more I was there, I just saw how incredible it was and how it gave their community the opportunity to come together and to talk about their ancestors and their history and just everything that brings them together. And they had this moment every year to do that for 3 days. And I see my girlfriend would make an altar in our house, and I was like, at first I thought it was kind of bizarre, but it started making sense. And at the time, as a journalist, I was doing a lot on Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
And so there was a conversation in my community about making sure people knew that like our lives mattered, and this was in response to death.
Right.
And people would make altars for Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and so
we see them all the time.
And so I saw this natural connection, but the key distinction was for the Latino community, the Mexican community, it was proactive. It wasn't pegged to something horrible happening in our community that galvanized us and brought us together to tell our stories. It was, we have 3 days every year that brings us together, that we tell our stories and invite people into our homes. And at that point, it really started to click that this is something that can be quite beneficial for my community. Let's start having the wheels turn and try to figure out how to extend it.
Let me get this straight, because I think it's super important and it's key for everybody. Here's an African-American brother, right?
Yeah.
Saying that there's something from the Latino community that you think it's worth enough to bring into your community, that it can be beneficial for like the growth of you guys, right? So there's an interconnection between Latinos and African-American.
Yeah, so I think 100%. Frankly, when you're in the United States, you interact with a lot of different people. And I think there's a notion in our society to kind of have everyone be siloed and, one community's over here, one community's over here. But naturally, we're all going to come together and just mix in some capacity. And so I think it makes more sense to emphasize and try to find the ways that when we mix that we can share our cultures to enhance both groups. So I definitely think that the Day of the Dead and certain aspects of the Latino community that have clear connection to the African American community can help my community. And likewise, I think my perspective as an African American and seeing how I see connections with the Latino community based on what my community is all about can improve the Latino community too. So I think there's a very strong and profound opportunity for us to work together to raise both communities up. So yeah, I definitely think there's some benefits.
So Barrett, let me try to put myself in your shoes there, because you walk into a celebration that is quasi-religious experience, So you look at it you're there, you're at the party, is the Day of the Dead, and you look at it as a religious thing? You look at it as a cult thing? Because I've been in a lot of them, and a lot of people look at it as a party. You know, it's a celebration, a festival. But they didn't give the importance. They didn't find the connection like you did.
Right.
So you see this as a actually tell us how is it you looked at it for the first time when you went there?
Yeah. So I'd say so. The church, Christianity is really big in the African American community. I grew up in the church. My grandfather was a minister. Personally, I'm not a super religious individual. I've just never been too fixated about what happens to me when I'm dead. It's I'm not going to know the answer. I'm going to have a greater likelihood of understanding what's going to happen to me when I'm alive than I will when I'm dead. So I'm not focusing on that. But I could see how the Day of the Dead was really cathartic. And even if you believe that your ancestors are coming home or whatnot, you don't necessarily need to believe that for it to be beneficial for you to talk about them or to remember them. So I think there's a really clear religious connection for Day of the Dead, but also a very legitimate secular connection where just as an individual living today, what are things
human feeling?
Human feeling. What are some things that I need to do to be a better version of myself as often as I can? And this tradition is one of those things where I think, and I could see that whether someone's having a party, just the act of bringing people into your house and taking the time over a month to create an altar and finding the photos and the trinkets and making the food, just dedicating that amount of time and bringing people into your house to share that effort,
and people
I think
travel.
Is really important.
I mean, family members come from all over the country for this particular moment. For this, it's a celebration. It's not a party.
Right.
It's used as a commercial party, but it's a celebration.
Yeah, America tries to commercialize everything. So that's just when you can get something from another country and it can be a very profound coming together that's spiritual and articulated in how Americans would use English, and we'll say it as a party and something that can be branded and marketed. And that's just the nature of our society. But
now let me ask you this, because you said this to us behind the scenes, but I want everybody in the audience to know, because this is part of who you are, and I think this is part of why you're making this film. And it's this: everybody who's listening, watching, this part is important, and it's this: you had a death in the family.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And through that, you say, you know what? You grieve that your death in the family, part of it at least, right? From what I understood, using the day of the death.
Yes.
Is that somewhat correct?
Yeah. So I'd say last year, my cousin passed away, and to be totally honest, he lived far away. We didn't hang out as much as you would imagine, like cousins who live right down the street from me. But we're family, and I went to the funeral, and I could see how much my uncle and my aunt and other family members were struggling with it. And at that point, that's when the light bulb went off a bit more, because up until that point, it was really like a theoretical, conceptual understanding I had, where I could see how this could benefit someone, but I never needed to apply it, know. Mm-hmm. But then you
until it happened to you
exactly,
in a way.
And so then it happened to my family, and I could see. So I guess. So after my cousin passed away, I started trying to call my uncle a bit more, just to chat with him, just make sure you see how he's doing. And my cousin lived in the same city as my uncle, and I could see that my cousin still had a bunch of stuff at my uncle and my aunt's house, and so my uncle had to figure out what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a structure to help you know what to do with, the things, what do you do with it? Do you keep everything? Do you throw everything away? What do you do? And at Day of the Dead, you put something on the altar of someone that matters to you. So this could enable him to go through his son's stuff and say, you know what, I'm going to keep this thing, these 5 things, whatever, and I'm okay with getting rid of the other things because I'm going to put these on the altar every year, and I'll talk about them. So just basic structures like that, so that you don't feel as lost or confused or alone. I really could see how it could profoundly help my family. And so that's one of I think that was kind of the final one where I okay, I just have to do it, because there's a really practical application within my family of having them do it. And so we shot for the film already, we shot some stuff in Atlanta with my parents, and it was really cathartic and just incredible, because my parents went around the house and they found all the family members of, anyone that we knew that passed away, that we had any kind of photo, and we talked about each one of those people. And these are conversations that there's no other reason to have these conversations if you don't have, unless you have something like Day of the Dead that encourages you to talk about these people that matter to you. So, my dad talked about his mom who passed away before I was born and all sorts of stuff like that. And, all these ancestors and all these stories and,
You take these to the family center. So I want to ask you, do you think, or while you were making the film, do you looked at it as this is going to be viewed differently by a African American family, a Latino family, a white family? Do you think that the race and background of the families might play differently when they look at your film or The Day of the Dead?
Yeah, it could possibly. It's hard to really anticipate how someone's going to interpret how one family discusses their history. But what I would say is, one thing that I like a lot about Day of the Dead is, since you make an altar in your house, there's no expectation that it's going to be homogenous. Like if you make an altar and your sister makes an altar, we're not expecting them to be the exact same. Right. And so my family's participation in the celebration, I think there's going to be a natural expectation that it will be different than a Mexican family's, and that's perfectly okay because we have different families. Right. And so I think that's also one of the great things about the celebration. It's not expecting everyone to be the same. It's just expecting each person to have the space to talk about these types of things and invite friends and into their home to share these conversations, so you can learn more about the people
that are part of your community. Here. And I'm curious because you said you started filming in Atlanta, where you were originally from. You filmed with your family. You talked to everybody within the family, or some folks within the family spoke about death that have occurred. Yeah, it's Day of the Dead, right? It's a Mexican tradition. Are you going to travel to Mexico? Are you going to go film in Mexico, or what's the plan there?
Yeah. So the big part about this film, and a lot of the questions I have, people have asked me, is making sure I'm not appropriating any kind of culture. And the key way to answer all those questions is to go to the places. Right. Because even if I know, let's say hypothetically, I know 95 to 90% of everything you need to know, that extra 5% or 10% is essential to have any kind of legitimacy with this type of endeavor. So yeah, going to Mexico is first trip on our list. Once we get the necessary funding to continue with the project, Mexico City, Oaxaca, maybe a couple other cities, bam, right off the bat.
When is the film coming out?
So our plan is to shoot through 2019 and culminate with a bigger cross-cultural Day of the Dead celebration in 2019. So it's like the structure of the film is to show a progression where we shot.
We learned from it.
Exactly.
And started. Okay.
Like we started in DC. We started in DC. We started in Atlanta, and it's a genuine attempt to do it as honest and as well as we can. And then now we go on a journey and we talk to people in Mexico. The next stop would be where we're planning on is like San Antonio, because it's a pretty homogenous Mexican city in the United States, which means that they do Day of the Dead slightly different than they do it in Mexico, but it's still legitimate. Like if you talk to someone in San Antonio and it comes Day of the Dead, they're going to the store and buying a bunch of stuff. If you go to Mexico, they're spending a month and they're making stuff, or they're going to like the field and getting the flowers. So like there's a natural, just subtle difference that's happening because you live in a different place.
It's more traditional.
Yeah, and then you go, so then next thing you know, there's large Mexican communities in Los Angeles, but in Los Angeles, it's far less homogenous than it is in San Antonio. So the people who do Day of the Dead are also collaborating with the Japanese Americans and African Americans because those are their neighbors. And so now we're already getting into this organic diversity sharing of culture that is the U.S. And then I think that gives creates a bridge into the African American community, because Day of the Dead is at its core an indigenous tradition, and when you look at cultures that haven't been completely changed due to colonization, there's always some sort of celebration around
something related to the Day of the Dead.
Yeah, and so
Absolutely
there's a
right.
lot of African cultural traditions or Caribbean ones that segments of the Black community use. But they're not mainstream because there's just so many of them. But now we can have those types of conversations.
Connect them to the Mexican Day of the Dead. You're right. You're absolutely
right.
right.
And then the last destination is to go to Africa and bring in something from my African ancestry so that when I make an altar, we can go as far back as I can.
That's super cool.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea, Barrett.
Look, we can't, we're running out of time, but we cannot let you go if I don't let my co-host Gunther Sanabria ask you a question about that it's going to inspire, folks who are listening to this that maybe want to get into film production.
Yes. So
go for it.
This is it. Look, you are a successful director, writer. There's the times of Trump that we live in. We have minorities, we have Latinos, we have African American being shot at, the Black, Black Lives Matter. What would be your message and as an inspiration, but not as a idealistic, like a real thing that you will give to the younger generation, the young producers, the young students that are thinking, I want to create a film too, and I want to create it freely. I don't want to be restricted by who I am or my race or my background. What would you tell them?
So it's complicated. I guess the key thing is if you really have a passion to do it, then you just need to find a way to do it. There's gonna be, if you in the U.S. if you're not that kind of all-American Midwestern white person, there's gonna be some kind of narrative that's gonna make you think you can't do something.
Exactly.
That's key. That's key.
And that narrative isn't really based on anything that's real. So just don't pay much attention to it because
absolutely right.
It's
we
just
see it a lot in the Latino community.
Yeah.
We see it a lot. That people think I'm Latino or I'm Black. I can't do it. I'm not good enough.
Like I'll say there will be obstacles that you will have that somebody else may not have, but if you spend too much time comparing yourself to somebody else, then you're not focusing on what you probably should be doing. So just if there's gonna be tons of narratives saying that you can't do stuff or that you're bad because you look a certain way, and that's just not based on anything. That's just propaganda.
Before I let you go, where can we find? Well, obviously the film is still in the process.
Yeah.
Number one, if people wanna, I know you got a trailer out there. I know you got a website where folks can get teasers. Right, the more you film, you'll be showing things on the website.
Yeah.
He's got a trailer in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. That's important too.
Yep.
And obviously there's a money component, like everything in life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that you need to raise money to be able to travel the world, to go to Africa, Mexico. Where can people donate and things like that?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. It's barrettholmespitner.com, and there's a tab on the website for altars, and then there's a Spanish one that's altares. I don't know.
Right.
And you can click on it, watch the video. There's a button on that to donate, and you can make a contribution. And once you make a contribution, I get your email address. You become part of the team. You get updates. You find out all about what's happening on the film. And a lot of this project, in many ways, is building a community. So donations and people becoming part of
a conversation, right, around this
right.
important and diverse issue.
So we have a conversation, and by contributing and visiting the website, you become part of the community, part of the conversation, and you get to help, shape and influence and help, educate me about things I need to do to make sure the film's really good.
Yep.
I love it. So let me say one more thing quickly. For those of you guys who are watching us on YouTube, below in the description, people can click on the link and go to the website. Otherwise, I will sit here and spell everything, and that's going to take a little while. And for those of you that are listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other wonderful platforms, on the description, we will also have the link so people can donate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Barrett, thank you so much for being here, man. You are
looking forward to that film. Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Barrett Holmes Pitner.
That's right.
Entre Gigantes.
Gracias. Till next time.